Hey everyone, welcome to another HSD beta video. I'm going to get a bit more detailed into combat today. The rules you're about to hear are beta rules. I don't think they're going to change before the final publication. They've been pretty thoroughly used at this point, but just keep in mind final changes may vary a bit. We'll cover the simple overall ideas first, and then I'll get into some of the more detailed portions. When you pop into a combat sequence, you'll start by rolling initiative. Everybody, friendly and enemy, puts themselves in a turn order based on these rules. The order of initiative slots is stagnant, but you have the ability to trade slots with other friendlies on a per round basis, which is really nice if you need somebody to go before you or after you in order to execute a plan of some kind. When your turn comes around, you get 3 actions. Available actions are move action, which is for moving, attack action, which is for attacking, and support action, which is basically anything that isn't moving or attacking. Switching weapons, fiddling with computer components, fixing or healing something, etc. Each of these actions can be taken up to twice in a turn with no penalty, so 2 moves and an attack, 2 attacks and a support, etc. However, if you want to take the same action 3 times, say 3 attacks, there is a mechanic called bonus action you can roll for. If you succeed, your third action in the turn can be the same as your first 2. If you fail, you lose your third action that turn entirely. That's basically it as far as general actions go. So let's get into specifics. Attacking works almost identically to a normal check, just has a few quirks to it. If you're rolling to shoot someone, use Mind Exert plus Range Combat. Difficulty for all combat checks is 2 unless some special condition changes it. Thick fog or darkness might make your ranged combat attacks difficulty 3 past a few hexes, for instance. Typically it's going to stay at 2, so we roll like a normal check. Here's where the little quirks for combat come in. Typically, combat uses weapons, which are extremely specialized tools that tend to make the act of violence considerably easier. As such, they provide a bonus to your roll called an accuracy score. It's listed on the weapon, so just add it to your roll. This rifle has an accuracy score of 1, so we add +1. Second, rather than needing a 12 to succeed like a normal check, in this case you need to hit the enemy's evasion score to succeed. Evasion scores are determined by many things: size, ability, cover, equipment, etc. If you reach the score, you hit the enemy. If you fail, you miss. We're going to say we hit in this case. Every character has an endure score as well. The evade score was used to determine if the enemy got hit. The endure score determines how much damage they can take before it actually hurts them. Think of it like a threshold. If the incoming damage doesn't reach the threshold, they shrug it off. Their armor absorbs it, or it was a bunch of inconsequential grazing shots, narrate it as you will. If the incoming damage exceeds the threshold, they take a wound, which is actual damage to the character. Wounds stick around, and when you take too many, you fall unconscious. Damage from weapons, however, only lasts through the end of the turn. You want to do as many wounds as you can in your turn, because when it ends, the damage stack will return to 0, and the next person will have to start from scratch. Okay, so we've hit them. Time to hurt them. On every weapon is a damage value. Roll the indicated dice and add any damage bonus. We got a 14 here. I'm going to say the enemy had a 16 endure. I haven't managed to hurt them yet, but this is only my first attack this turn. Let's try another. A hit. Damage is 15. That's a total turn damage of 29 and their endure is 16. I've crossed the threshold once, which causes a wound to the enemy. I would need a total of 32 to cross it twice though. I'm 3 points below a second wound with this attack. This is where the bonus action really shows its value. If I roll for a bonus action succeed, I could attack again. I only need 3 damage to wound the enemy a second time, and if I roll really well and get a 19, which is possible, I would actually wound them twice. That's 3 wounds with 3 attacks, which is excellent economy. At the moment, I'm only at 1 wound with 2 attacks, but that's not my only option. If I'm out in the open right now, I could use my last action to move and go hide and cover. That would leave me with only 1 wound on the enemy this turn. I could accept that, or I could use my readiness points to bump up my damage roll. As I've mentioned before, HSD2 is a very transparent system. Almost no numbers are hidden from players. This is to reflect the fact that even though we're looking at things from a meta standpoint, the characters can see what's going on. They know when a situation is hopeless, and they know when they can push just a little bit more and get what they need. I know that I only need 3 more damage to get another wound on this enemy. I can put 3 readiness into my damage result and knock it up to the threshold, causing a second wound. Now there are limits to this. For one, you can only ever add a max of 3 to a roll, so if I was 4 below, I'd have to use a reroll instead and hope for the best. For 2, readiness is finite, and you don't start with much of it. In fact, if I dumped 3 into that attack, I'd probably be depleted for the rest of combat, or at least down to my last 1 or 2. But it's an action that exists if I want it, and there isn't really any risk involved in using it, as opposed to the bonus action, which if I had failed to roll or failed to hit, would leave me without a third action and the possibility of hanging in the wind when the enemy turn came. Let's take a peek at close combat while we're here. Close combat works the same as ranged combat, except you use your body exert CQC score for hitting rather than your mind score. Attack like normal, adding your weapon's accuracy bonus to the roll. Depending on who you're fighting, this may be tougher. See, in addition to providing a means of attacking, most melee weapons provide a means of defending as well. This defense score acts like a close combat cover, boosting the enemy's evasion score to represent them bouncing incoming blows off their own weapon. There's another feature to close combat too that makes it faster and deadlier. Both sides get to fight at the same time. On both your turn and your enemy's turn, both of you will be able to swing at each other and both of you will have the chance to deal damage. Close combat has a higher risk-reward ratio than ranged. Even if you're fighting a superior opponent in a gunfight, you can protect yourself with cover and choose your sightlines, engaging when you feel you have an advantage. In close combat, you really need to choose your targets carefully. Ranged opponents with no melee weapon can't fight back easily, and you can overwhelm them rapidly in close combat. But if you get in a fight with a superior foe, they have twice the opportunity to hurt you. This also helps give a different experience to both ranged and melee fighters, so it doesn't feel like doing the same thing and just calling it different. That's combat in a nutshell. There are tons of additional fun features to this, like techniques that give you unique abilities, special things you can do, guns with cool firing patterns that hit multiple hexes at once, neat narrative options for movement, close combat fights that actually drift around the battlefield, the list goes on. But at its core, you're dealing with the above concept. Roll to hit, and deal as much damage as you can in your turn, trying to exceed the endure threshold as many times as possible to deal wounds, while gauging the risk to yourself in the following turns. Damage resets at the end of every turn, so the next person doesn't need to keep track of what the previous person did as far as damage goes, and wound totals tend to be pretty low, so your overall combat tracking is pretty minimal.